Okay. So coming to carbohydrates, as you all know, carbohydrates are the major source of energy of our diet, and carbohydrates are composed of elements carbohydrates, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So that is the reason they are called as saccharides, which means sugar. Okay. Whatever the carbohydrates we get, our main sources are produced by the photosynthesis in plant. So such as glucose, as you all know, what will happen, how the plant synthesize is by using carbohydrates, water, and energy from the sun. Okay, and are oxidized in living cells to produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So, not generally, carbohydrates are sugars that provide energy when we consumed. So whenever we take carbohydrates, it's are broken down, okay, and to extract energy. Carbon dioxide and water are released in this process. So you all know how the carbohydrates are prepared. That is during photosynthesis. Okay, glucose is formed. So glucose is the primary carbohydrates of our body, which is used to produce energy. Okay, carbohydrates are classified as biomolecules. Simple carbohydrates are referred to as simple sugars, which are often sweet to taste. So, generally, carbohydrates, whatever we eat, are some sweet, and some are non-sugary, which are said to be carbohydrates, but which are not sweet for our body, which are not sweet when we taste. Okay, so carbohydrates are the most abundant biomolecules present on the earth, and carbohydrates are also known as polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones because they might consist of aldehydes or ketones. Okay, and there are three major carbohydrates, as we all know. They are monosaccharides, disaccharides, and oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. So mainly monosaccharides are something which are the simple sugars, and they cannot be broken down again into smaller carbohydrates. Okay, and the most abundant monosaccharide in the nature is 6 carbon, that is D-glucose. Sometimes it is also refers to as dextrose. Then coming to disaccharides. Disaccharides are consisting of two monosaccharides, okay, which are joined together. Okay, they can be split and then they can be divided into two monosaccharides. Okay, for example, is sucrose, table sugar that we can broke down into glucose and fructose. Then coming to oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides are something as a short chain. Okay, so they consist of 3 to 9 monosaccharide units. Okay, and these are reduced, and there are some of the other linkages in between them that is called as glycosidic bond. Okay, then the most abundant are disaccharides with two monosaccharides. For example, is sucrase. Uh, then coming to polysaccharides. Polysaccharides are sugar polymers that consist of more than 20 monosaccharides unit, 10 or more. Okay, 10 to more monosaccharides when they are connected, it is known as polysaccharides. And polysaccharides are of two types when they are stored. Two types of storages are there. There are storage polysaccharides and structured polysaccharides. Storage polysaccharides are known as starch, as we can see, and the other structural polysaccharides are known as cellulose. Then coming to monosaccharides, we will detailedly discuss about all the carbohydrates. So monosaccharides is nothing but a single sugar unit. For example, glucose, fructose, and galactose, like that. So glucose is also known as dextrose. It gives energy for our body activity. It is the primary fuel of cell. It is usually not found in diet like in corn syrup and all. This is produced from starch. Whenever we broke down, then only we will get the glucose. Okay. Then coming to fructose. Fructose, as you all know, it is present in fruit, honey, sweetest of the simple sugars. You can tell that fructose is the sweetest compared to all the other monosaccharides. Then we can see them in soft drinks, ready to use cereals, desserts, and all. Then coming to galactose. Galactose is known as milk sugar. Okay. Glucose is broken down in cells to produce energy. Okay, and as you all know, galactose is formed if it is combined with glucose, that is glucose plus galactose, it gives lactose. Okay, and coming to mannose, a monosaccharides which is found in fruits and vegetables. Cranberries contains a higher amount of mannose, which has been effective in the UTI. As you all know, cranberries are used for treating the urinary tract infections. Then fructose commonly refers to as fruit sugar, and fructose is combined with glucose to give sucrose or table sugar. Okay, then fructose is the sweetest monosaccharide and is found in fruits, vegetables, honey. Fructose can be broken down for energy in the body. Whatever the disaccharides, polysaccharides, or something what we are eating in the digestion or absorption process, what will happen? It broke down into simpler ones. Okay, if you consume a disaccharide, then in the food, in the digestion process, it broke down into simple molecules. Okay, simple sugar molecules as monosaccharides. Okay, so there is a test whenever, in case of some of the other diabetes patients, you can see Benedict's test is used to know the how much level of glucose is present. Okay, so whenever we test, they go for a urine test where they can check the levels of glucose in the urine. So if there is an increased level of glucose in the urine, then they said to be as an indicator of diabetes. So monosaccharides, these are easily soluble, like easily absorbed in our body. They doesn't require any much digestion process. They are quickly absorbed, and in liver it is converted into glycogen and it is stored. Then coming to disaccharides. Disaccharides consist of two monosaccharides units. For example, maltose, lactose, sucrose. So glucose plus glucose gives maltose. Glucose plus lactase gives lactose, like that. Then see, glucose plus fructose gives sucrose. Okay, like that, two simple sugar molecules are combined in such a way that gives a disaccharide. Glucose plus galactose gives lactose, and glucose plus glucose gives maltose in such a way. Then maltose is called as malt sugar. It is formed by the breakdown of starch. Okay, starch, it's a polysaccharide. It consists of a long chain of glucose molecules. Okay, then malted barley, a key ingredient of beer, consists of high levels of maltose. As you all know, this fermentation process and all, there in that the barley, which is there, a key ingredient, it consists of this maltose. Okay, then during germination of barley seeds, the starch goes through hydrolysis process to form maltose. This process is halted by drying, roasting, all this process. Then coming to lactose, as you all know, lactose as milk sugar. It is present in milk and milk products. Sometimes what will happen, an intolerance of lactose can occur in people. Okay, that they doesn't have, they might be unable to produce an enzyme lactase that hydrolyzes the lactose into monosaccharides. Okay, whatever the process is there in the breaking down, they require some or the other enzyme. So when they lack the enzyme, then the body couldn't be able to absorb that food item or these types of molecules. Then what will happen? Our body uh, show some or the other reactions. Okay, so whenever someone is intolerant to something, means the body is unable to accept that. So if it is, if some or we say some or the other person is lactose intolerant when he is unable to digest that lactose, because there might be some or the other um, defect in the absorption process of that particular food item or particular enzyme is absent. Okay. Then coming to sucrose, as you all know, it is a table sugar. It is the most abundant disaccharide in in our nature, and sucrose is found in sugar cane and sugar beets. Coming to oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides are type of carbohydrates which are formed when 3 to 10 simple sugar molecules are linked together. So whatever it is, monosaccharides link together in order to form disaccharides, oligosaccharides, and so on, polysaccharides. So now, if there are 3 to 10 sugar molecules are attached in a chain in a linkage, in the presence of that linkage bond is called as glycosidic bond. There you can see oligosaccharides. So smaller amounts occurs naturally in many plants. Oligosaccharides are present naturally in some or the other many plants. Then oligosaccharides can have many functions, including cell recognition and cell binding. For example, are glycolipids. These glycolipids is the combination of glucose plus lipids. Here, they play a major role in the immune response. Okay. Then coming to polysaccharides. These polysaccharides, which are in larger amounts. Now there we have seen 3 to 10. Now more than 10. Whenever there are more than 10 sugar molecules or saccharides are arranged, then it comes to polysaccharide. So here there are two types of polysaccharides: storage polysaccharides, okay, which contains only glucose units. Okay, for examples are starch, glycogen, and amylopectin. Then coming to structural polysaccharides. Structural polysaccharides contains only beta glucose units. Okay, there are two important ones are cellulose and chitin. Chitin is a modified beta glucose unit. So the storage polysaccharides is nothing but it consists only glucose units, whereas structural polysaccharides consist of beta glucose units. So starch glycogens, these are made up of glucose. Okay, so now glucose, n number of glucose are attached in a single ball chain, then it refers to as starch. Starch we can see in cereals, legumes, tubers. Okay, whereas glycogen we see in only in animal food, and some of the other glycogen in our body is stored in liver and in muscles. Okay, then coming to fiber. Fiber is something where that is not digested by our body. Okay, so plant food, vegetables, fruits, grain, they consist of some or the other fiber which our body can't digest it. Okay, so for examples are cellulose, hemicellulose, pectins, gums, lignin. All these things are good as they provide bulk to our diet, but these are not absorbed. They play a major role for not increasing the uh, glucose levels in our body. Like whenever you have some or the other carbohydrates or something, those end product will be glucose. So when we eat those things, our sugar levels, that is glucose levels in our blood increases. Okay, but when there is absence in the fiber, what will happen? These are directly absorbed in our bloodstreams and it increases the glucose levels. But in the presence of fiber, there is slow increase in the glucose levels in our blood. Okay, fiber plays a major role in maintaining the sugar levels. It doesn't give a sudden spike in the glucose in the blood. Okay, so whenever the food which is rich in fiber is recommended to the diabetic patient because already they are having some or the other higher glucose levels in their blood. Now, when they have food, there might be increase or spike. So, if they take fiber-rich food, then there is a slow increase in their glucose levels in their blood. And it also helps to deal with the constipation. Whenever a person is suffering from constipation, if he takes some or the other fiber rich foods and all, it gives some or the other easy passage of that phases. Then some in starch there are two mixture, like it is a mixture of amylose and amylopectin, and it is found in plant food. Okay, amylose makes up to 20% of plant starch. Long chains of amylo tends to coil. Amylopectin makes up to 80% of plant starch. So whatever it is, the starch consists of 80 to 20 percentage of both amylose and amylopectin. During fruit ripening, starch undergoes hydrolysis to produce glucose and maltose, which are sweet. So whenever whenever it is present in our fruits and all, we can see when the during ripening stage, these things are converted. Starch that is present in that foods is converted into glucose and maltose. That is the reason we can see some or the other sweetness in that fruits. Okay. When we consume starch, our digestive system break down them into glucose units for the use of our body. Okay. Then glycogen. So you all know glycogen as it is stored polysaccharide which is found in animals, and glycogen is stored in the liver. Our body also what it does whenever the excess of glucose is present, what it does, it stores that glucose in the form of glycogen in the liver or in the muscles. So whenever there is need of the glycogen or then there is need of glucose in our body, when you are starving, when you're not having proper food, when you're starving, what will happen? The whatever the there is no glucose present to your body. There is no available glucose. So our body will do? Our body will go and convert the glycogen that is present in the liver to glucose, and then we can go through our normal body activities, whatever it is required for our body. That energy is we will get. Glycogen is a polysaccharide that is stored in the glucose in the muscle. It's similarly to amylopectin, which is highly branched. Then coming to cellulose. Cellulose, structural polysaccharide. Okay, cellulose consists of glucose units bonded. Whatever the bond that is present in between the glucose molecules is known as glycosidic bond. Okay, this glycosidic bond configuration changes the three-dimensional structure of the cellulose compared with the amylose. The chains of the glucose unit is straight. This allows chains to align next to each other to form a strong, rigid structure. So, whatever the structure of the cellulose is, it is um, uh, uh, a long chain that consists of a lot of glucose molecules that are bound together with the glycosidic bond, and those are having a strong, rigid structure as they are aligned next to each other. The next thing is heparin. Heparin is also a type of polysaccharides. As you all know, whenever there are some or the other blood clots seen in the body, they give heparin as it prevents clotting. Okay, clotting in the bloodstreams. Then sources of carbohydrates. As you all know, normally um, whatever the cereals something cereals are there, it consists of some or the other sugar molecules. Yes, so here you can see sugars in honey, fruits, soft drinks, milk, sugar, and starches you can see in cereals, pasta, flour, breads, potatoes, roots, pulses, and all. And fiber, whatever the fruits, vegetables, or cereals, brown rice, oatmeals, vegetables. Uh, you can see fiber in them. Whatever the skin or okay, when you go through making some or the other juices and all, when you when you blend them, you'll get some or the other fibers type. Okay, that is known as fiber. But when you go and have them like in juice form, all that fiber which was present goes off. So it is better to have a fruit than having a fruit juice. Okay, because fiber helps our body not to spike up the glucose levels in our blood. But when there is only juice taking up, when you take only juice, what will happen? All the sudden spike in the glucose in the in the blood, and even it is easily absorbed in the body. Okay, and there might be again some or the other thing is there might be some or the other hungry. What do you say? The person will become hungry again. Okay, so when it is with fiber, it gives satiety to the body, and they consume less food. Okay. Okay, so you can see where which types of carbohydrates are present. Okay, and pectin and gums are present in mainly in plant secretion, seeds and fruits, whereas cellulose in the outer coats of seeds, vegetables, and glycogen is present in the meat products and seed products because on glycogen is an animal product, animal food, animal thing where we can see only them in animals. Okay, then starch and dextrin, you can see them in grains, roots, tubers, and legumes. Lactose only in milk, then sucrose, even in canes and beet sugars, and maltose in bagged starches, whatever the malt grains or something. Then galactose is also seen in milk. Then glucose, fruit, honey, corn syrup, fructose in fruits and honey. Functions of carbohydrates. What does carbohydrates do in our body? Apart from giving energy, apart from uh, providing energy to our body, our cells, and our brain, the other things. They spare protein. Whenever a person is undergone any of the other injury, they require protein for the healing process. Okay, so when there is no proper protein present in our body, what will happen? The glucose takes up and give the energy. Okay, so now when the protein is required for particular thing, then the other thing, even proteins also gives so 1 gram of carbohydrate gives us 4 kilocalories of the energy. Okay, so when there is no when there is proper carbohydrate seen, the energy what we want will get from carbohydrates. Then protein will do its work. It is required for the healing process, then it goes for the healing process. But when we take less amount of carbohydrates, when there is no proper energy there, the protein again works up and it provides energy to the body. So carbohydrates, what it do, it gives energy, required energy, and it spares the protein for the protein work. Okay, then synthesis of substances. Carbohydrates are used in the synthesis of non-essential amino acids. Okay, glycoproteins, glycolipids. Then promotes complete lipid metabolism. Then provide bulk fiber to the diet. As you all know, fiber which gives bulk to our diet. And it also gives us flavor to our diet. Okay. And nucleic acid of connective tissues, matrix, galactosides of nerve tissues, it helps in there. Then it is also necessary for the proper functioning of our central nervous system. Okay. Then it is also provides adequate hepatic glycogen, stores enough storage, enhances normal liver detoxification ability. So whatever the stored glucose is there, it goes into the liver for the storage. Excess of the glucose is stored in the form of glycogen in the liver. So whatever the it even helps in the liver detoxification. It enhances because it is the main purpose is to store the glycogen. So when there is proper amount of levels of glucose is properly converted into glycogen, it also helps in the proper functioning of the liver. So as you all know, as I said, 1 gram of carbohydrates gives 4 kilocalories of the energy. Okay, and per day a person should at least get the total calorie intake from the carbohydrates around 65 to 45%, around total 100% in 100% of whatever the diet he should take in that at least 45 to 65% of all the energy should be from the carbohydrates. Okay, for example, if a person he should take 200 kilocalories per day. Okay, then 900 to 1300 should be from the carbohydrates only. That is, he should consume at least 200 to 300, that is 225 to 325 grams of carbohydrate per day. Okay, that means whatever you are eating from breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then to snacks, then to uh, whatever you are taking like tea and all. Whatever in that, there should be some or the other or carbohydrates are present in that. If you calculate them totally, you'll get an idea of this. Then coming to digestion process, the process of breakdown of food into simpler compounds. First thing, the digestion of carbohydrates takes place in mouth itself. Okay, so whenever there is some or the other chewing process taking place, there only the breakdown of the carbohydrates takes place. Okay, then in stomach, then in small intestine. So what will happen in mouth? Mouth, what is happening? There is chewing process taking place. Okay, the chewing, then that is converted into smaller particles. There, that it undergoes with the saliva. Like it the chewing process, what happens, the saliva is released and it mixed with the food, and then when the chewing process takes place, okay, it is called as mastication. What will happen here? The saliva, which consists of a salivary amylase, it helps in the breakdown of the starch. Okay, so in mouth only a 5% of the starch is broken down. Okay, then the pH of the salivary amylase is around 6.5 to 7. Then in stomach, what will happen in stomach is like the strong uh, peristaltic contractions of the stomach mix with the carbohydrates into the more uniform mixture of chyme. So whatever the food which you are taking, you are chewing, and then when it is going into the stomach, what will happen? There are some or the other contractions taking place in the stomach. Okay, what will do? It mixes that into to make a uniform mixture of chyme. Okay, so what will happen here? Here, about 30 to 40% of dietary starch is digested before bolus is broken down and acidified. Before entering into the bowl, into the bolus, here only whatever the 30 to 40% of starch is getting digested. Okay, and the action of whatever the salivary amylase, talin, whatever it is there, it doesn't work in the stomach. Okay, because it pH is around 6, here it is 1. So what will happen? The whatever the action of that salivary amylase is there, it is from the stomach until it enters the stomach. After it is entering to the stomach, when there is acidic condition, it doesn't further break down. Okay. So next, the further breaking down of the carbohydrates takes place in the small intestine. Only here a uniform mixture of the chyme is prepared in the stomach. Okay, there is no other proper digestion taking place here. Then in small intestine, there comes pancreatic juices. Okay, whatever the pancreatic juices that consist of some or the other enzymes, those enzymes helps in the breaking down of the polysaccharides, oligosaccharides or disaccharides into monosaccharides. Okay, then when these enzymes are also secreted in the intestinal cells that are lined by villi. Okay, so as you can see, starch is converted into maltose and isomaltose in the presence of pancreatic amylase. Then maltose is converted in the presence of maltase into glucose and glucose. Then isomaltase in the presence of isomaltase. It converts into glucose and dextrin. Then dextrin in the presence of dextrinase, it converts into glucose. So for the absorption of starch, there are these many enzymes involved. Okay. So from starch to maltose to isomaltose, then isomaltose to glucose to dextrin, then the maltose which is formed, then the presence of maltase is converted into glucose and glucose, like that. Then dextrin is converted into glucose in the presence of dextrinase. All these enzymes are secreted by the pancreas. Okay, in those pancreatic juices, all these enzymes are present. Then lactose is converted into glucose and galactose in the presence of lactase. Sucrose is converted into sucrose and fructose in the presence of sucrase. So, if, as I said, there might be somewhat the intolerance present, Whenever these enzymes are lacked, when there is no proper secretion of these enzymes, then only some or the other intolerances are taken place. For example, is lactose intolerance, because in the absence of the enzyme lactase, or some or the other deficient. Then undigested carbohydrates. Whatever the carbohydrates that you eat are uh, absorbed mostly, but there is some or the other thing called as cellulose, semicellulose, and something starch, fiber and all. These are not properly absorbed by our body because we lack in enzyme cellulase. Okay, so that are not digested by our body, and then what will happen? Those are eliminated out. Okay, so certain carbohydrates like cellulose are undigested by human due to lack of enzymes like cellulase, but it provides fiber for absorption of water into the large intestine, expands the muscle walls, and triggers the muscle contraction for egestion, cures for constipation. So whatever it is, these undigested carbohydrates helps to maintain the healthy gut. Okay, because all these things are not giving us any energy or something, but they are helping in the proper absorption of water in the largest intestine. They are giving bulk to the faces. They are helping in the cure for the constipation. Okay, and they even give a satiety to our body. So as you can see here in the small intestine, they are uh, the epithelial cells of the lining consist of villi. Here, these things are getting absorbed in the body in our small intestine. In the these are things absorbed. Okay, the digested food from alimentary canal to bloodstream. So whenever the food is getting digested, these things absorb in the bloodstream. Okay, so monosaccharide is absorbed in small intestine. Sodium glucose transport protein in membrane help absorb glucose and galactose. Okay, so you can see SGLT here, it helps in the absorption of the glucose and galactose. Okay, then fructose is absorbed when converted into glucose inside the cell. So glucose, as you all know, glucose is the final product. Okay, so whatever it is that should be converted into glucose, and then only it is getting absorbed in the body. Okay, dietary fiber. So as I already said that it is an roughage or bulk that includes in the parts of the plants which a body cannot be digested. Dietary fiber is mainly we can see them in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. Okay, so it helps in preventing or relieving in the constipation. So fiber is simply a type of carbohydrates found naturally in plant-based foods. This is not digestible in humans, as you all know. Then there are two types of fibers. Fibers are there like soluble fibers and insoluble fibers. And soluble fibers, these are types of fibers which dissolves in water to form a gel-like material. It can help lower cholesterols and glucose levels. So these soluble fibers are found in oats, peas, beans, apples, citrus fruits, carrots, barley, and psyllium. So whenever there is some or the other indigestion, not indigestion, when there is constipation seen, there are some or the other products which are psyllium, which helps in the relieving of the constipation. Okay. Then comes insoluble fibers, which are types of fibers that promotes the motion of material through your digestive system and increase the stool bulk. So whatever the elimination of the foods are there, it gives somewhat the bulk and it increases the bulk in the stool. Okay, so it can be benefited to those who struggle with constipation or irregular stools. Whole wheat flour, wheat bran, nuts, beans, vegetables such as cauliflower, beans, potatoes are good sources of insoluble fibers. So, insolubles and soluble fibers, as you all know, they help in giving, providing some or the other things to our body, that is, insoluble fibers accelerate GI transit, that is gastrointestinal transit, and it delays it. Then it increases fecal weight. It helps in lower the cholesterol levels. Then it promotes bowel movement. It helps in the delays in the glucose absorption. Okay, it helps in delays in glucose absorption as well. So whatever it is, fiber helps us to maintain the glucose levels. So slowly it helps in the absorption. Okay, slowly. So it, yeah. So what will happen if you won't take proper carbohydrates? Okay, so whenever the main source is to provide the energy to the body. Okay, whatever it is, our whole diet consists of around uh, 45 to 65% of carbohydrates. Okay, whatever from the 100%, we mainly require carbohydrates because it gives us a lot of energy. Okay, so what will happen if you won't take proper carbohydrates? Here it gives, there might be such or some or the other complications like heart arrhythmias, cardiac contractile function impairment, sudden death, osteoporosis, kidney damage, increased cancer risk, impaired physical activity, and lipid abnormalities can all be linked in a long-term restriction of carbohydrates in the diet. Whenever there is some or the other requirement of energy is not taking place, it goes, what every nutrient gives us energy, like all these macronutrients gives us some or the other energy. Okay, so but the main source should be from carbohydrates. But when we are not getting it from carbohydrates, then again our body depends on proteins and fats for this energy purpose. So these might be the complications that are taking place when there is no proper carbohydrates uh, we take from the diet. Okay, thank you. For this carbohydrates, we are done with this unit. Are there any doubts to be clarified? If you have any, you can ask.
Which type of questions will come in the exam, madam?
Yes,
Which type of questions will come in the exam, madam, in this chapter?
uh, like classification of carbohydrates, the functions, and some of the questions might be on digestion and absorption.
Long questions, ma'am.
Like classification and digestion and absorption.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, okay, then I'll end the class here.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.